Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:06 on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. Busy Monday morning. Every day is busy. But we got you covered at 7:05. Joe DeGeneva with his legal analysis. 7:35. Mark Morgan, former commissioner of the Customs and Border Protection. 8:05. Ian Lovejoy, Virginia delegate on the General Assembly, shutting down. And then at 8:35, Billboard Chris Elston and Mia Hughes. She's involved in that study showing linkage to transgender drugs and cancer. We always like checking in with Billboard Chris. It's Larry O'Connor alongside Mercedes Schlapp.
Good morning. No, it's not Thursday. It's Monday.
I know.
I'm in for our wonderful Julie.
Yes, it's great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
And our heart is with Julie Gunlock. I don't know. It's not. We just miss her. There's nothing major going on, unless she needed a day off.
I
know. I said
She's
it. I don't
back.
know why I said our heart is with Julie, as if she's suffering from some.
Well, she has to suffer because she has to hang out with you on Mondays.
No,
so
she's
now,
suffering
why don't you
because
say
she's
my heart
not
goes
here.
out to Mercy Schlapp
She's
because
suffering
I'm
because
stuck
she's
with you.
not here. All right.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. Speaking of suffering, let's talk about Liz Cheney, shall we?
Oh, that's insufferable.
Liz Cheney, who headed up the
do it.
January 6th committee. There's a lot of dispute. It's funny, for a committee whose sole purpose was to get the truth revealed about January 6th, there sure are a whole lot of disputed facts coming out of that committee and a whole lot of questions that were never asked, let alone answered. One of the big disputes has to do with the security that day. Why wasn't the National Guard called in? There was testimony that said that President Donald Trump preemptively authorized 10,000 troops. Now, everybody knows, even though the January 6th committee, clouded this issue and convoluted this issue and falsely claimed that Donald Trump was responsible for calling in the National Guard or blocked the National Guard from being deployed, everybody knows that the president literally cannot call in the National Guard. That is a state, or in this case, District of Columbia, along with the Speaker of the House's decision on this sort of thing. We have it. It's actually legally set up so that the president can't call in the military for a domestic situation. You don't want the president to be able to have that power, and he doesn't. But when it comes to the District of Columbia, because it's a federal district, he does have authority to authorize or reject a request. He preemptively authorized it. That's what testimony laid out. Liz Cheney denied that. She said, well, Kash Patel was the only one who testified to that, and he's not a credible witness because he's a partisan and he was part of the conspiracy, or whatever you want to say. So this has just sort of been hanging out there, Mercedes, as sort of a, he said, she said situation, and she being Liz Cheney, who was in charge of the committee. Well, now it turns out, based on exclusive reporting from Molly Hemingway at The Federalist, that in fact there was more supporting evidence that Trump had pre-authorized 10,000 National Guard troops. In an early transcribed interview conducted by the committee, it included precisely that evidence from a key source. The source was Deputy Chief of Staff Anthony Ornato. His first interview on January 28th of 2022 said that he overheard White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows pushing D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as many National Guard troops as she needed to protect the city. He also testified President Trump had suggested 10,000 would be needed to keep the peace at the public rallies and protests scheduled for January 6th. That's direct corroboration of what Kash Patel said. So now you've got multiple voices saying, of course, that's what President Trump did. He did ask for that. Not only did the committee not accurately characterize that interview, but they suppressed the transcript from public view, and committee allies began pushing critical stories and conspiracy theories about Mr. Ornato ahead of his follow-up interviews. Ornato, a career Secret Service official who had been detailed to the security position in the White House, and not only was he Deputy Chief of Staff, but he was also a former Secret Service official who knew quite a bit about protecting the president and protecting the National Mall. This is blockbuster that Liz Cheney overlooked this, suppressed it, deleted it, censored it, kept it from the American people. And by the way, her reaction, we'll get to that in a minute. But just first, that right there, Mercy, is, again, perfectly indicative of what the January 6th committee did. It wasn't about finding the truth. It was weaponized to attack Trump and his supporters.
Absolutely. This January 6th committee, it's a sham. The mere fact that individuals like Liz Cheney participated and orchestrated the messaging out of there, which was just to try to destroy Donald Trump and not basically tell the truth. In fact, you even had the media play along with this. The Washington Post basically giving it 4 Pinocchios that Trump called for the National Guard, that he requested the National Guard, but then Nancy Pelosi said no.
Right.
I mean, it is outrageous.
Technically,
it's outrageous.
it was Muriel Bowser who said no, along with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's never been asked about the security that day. She's never.
Never even brought to the committee on that. And that's the thing. It was a complete sham. And the mere fact is that we know that the White House and Mark Meadows and the gang, they said, look, if you need the protection, we'll give you the protection. Yeah. And they knew it was going to be a contentious situation down at the mall, or it could become one.
To see the chief of staff of the Capitol Police, Steve Sund, he actually was at my wine tasting event the other night. This is the man who was actually
it?
It was great. Thank you for asking.
Why wasn't I invited?
You were. It was the State of the Union night. You were busy. Yeah. But anyway, the man who was the chief of police for the Capitol Police that day, his book, Courage Under Fire, is a fantastic book. I'm going to try to see if he can join us a little later in the program and have him talk about what he knew that day. I know that he wrote about it in the book. But Liz Cheney's reaction to this story, they keep saying, we've been completely transparent and we did all these interviews. There's over 1,000 interviews the committee conducted. Only half of them, less than half of them, are actually, the transcripts are on the website for the January 6th here. They conducted 1,000 interviews, and over half of the interviews are hidden from the American people. Why? Good question. Why would you hide? Yeah. Why would you hide testimony from that committee if it was all about getting the truth out? Representative Barry Loudermilk, chairman of the House Administration Subcommittee on Oversight, he's the one who's been really pushing on trying to get more details out. He's the one who released the video of that so-called pipe bomb in front of the DNC when Kamala Harris was there, which clearly was not a pipe bomb. That more and more and more needs to come out here, but it needs to come out quicker than it's coming out. Good on Molly Hemingway for getting this and writing this up. Oh, yeah.
And remember, it was Joe Biden that in his speech moved from Russia-Ukraine being his top issue to January 6th and going into this line of the threat of democracy during the State of the Union. Comparing
people who were on the mall that day on January 6th with tanks rolling into Ukraine. It was one of the most despicable things that he's done, and that's saying a lot. Liz Cheney went crazy on Twitter reacting to this story. She and Mark Levin got into quite a throwdown actually over it. You don't mess with Mark Levin. He went right back to Liz Cheney.
Or Julie Levin.
That matter.
Those are my people.
Mark, by the way, has invited open invitation for Liz Cheney to come on his show and discuss this issue if she had any courage. And if she actually believed that she had the truth on her side, she certainly would come on the Mark Levin show. And if that happens, we certainly will be listening. It's 6:15, WMAL, traffic and weather every 10 minutes, first on the fives.
WMAL, making sense of education, because what's happening in your kid's school matters. Download the WMAL app to stream us for free.
Larry O'Connor here, Mercedes Schlapp there, and we're with you all morning long here as we unpack what's going on in the world. As we sort of get ready for this election season, Mercedes.
Get ready, darling. We're
drinking out of a
we're
fire
like immersed in it.
It's drinking out of a fire hose, and the tactics from the left are so insidious, and they're able to harness the actual government for their purposes in this election. I want you to listen to what Adam Schiff, who's running for Senate in California, what he said about the intelligence briefings that President Trump soon will receive as the nominee for the Republicans. This is standard fare. Whenever somebody becomes the nominee for a political party, they begin getting daily briefings from the intelligence community so that if and when they win the election, they're already sort of ramped up to speed, right? And they can kind of jump into the fray. So here's what Adam Schiff said about those briefings.
Congressman, let me ask you about this development this weekend. U.S. intelligence officials are planning to provide briefings for Donald Trump if he officially secures the nomination, despite the fact that he's facing 40 felony charges for his handling of classified documents.
You love the way the media frames the question.
Right, because he's a criminal, right?
Right,
This is exactly right.
Yeah, it's just despicable. That said.
Yeah.
As the former chair of the House Intelligence Committee, do you think it's appropriate for him to receive intelligence briefings?
Well, that is the practice, but we've never had a situation where one of the candidates for president has been so criminally negligent when it comes to handling, if not worse, when it comes to handling classified information. So I have to hope, and knowing the intelligence community as I do, that they will dumb down the briefing for Donald Trump. That is, they will give him no more information than absolutely necessary, nothing that would reveal sources or methods, because we can't trust that he will do the right thing with that information. He's been so reckless. So, yes, it does concern me. It is part of a long tradition.
So there you go.
I mean, seriously. So we go from rapist to convict.
Yeah.
This is we're in a really bad situation.
This is a horrible. This really is.
This is not where we can. This is what the Democrats are going to be spending billions of dollars on to brainwash Americans into making it seem that Donald Trump is the most terrific person on earth.
Well, beyond all of that, the intelligence community, if you're hoping in some way to change the image of the intelligence community and let them know that they're not political and they're not part of some sort of cabal against Donald Trump, and they just play it right down the middle, and they don't use politics with anything. If that's what you want to let the American people think of the intelligence community, then maybe you shouldn't go on TV saying, well, yeah, they're going to treat Trump real differently and they're going to dumb down his intelligence briefings. They're not going to give him the information they would have given anyone other than Donald Trump. Because maybe it's me, but that suggests that the intelligence community is kind of part of the plan here and part of the political operation instead of actually doing their job.
This is the problem. And there are plenty of good men and women in the FBI and the CIA. The problem has become when you have these corrupt political leaders in these institutions that cannot be trusted because they mismanaged the Russian hoax. They created something that should have never come to light.
They didn't mismanage it.
And they went after the president for 4 years. Literally, they have made the Republican presidential nominee into an enemy of the state. This is so outrageous when we have our institutions that are too much power. They're abusing the power to destroy a Republican presidential candidate. Yeah. This is where we are.
This is where we are. And if and all those good men and women in the intelligence community who really do a good job, and they would never, I would love for them to be heard today saying Adam Schiff is full of crap. We're not going to do that. We're professionals. We're going to do our job, and we're going to make sure President Trump is briefed in the way that he needs to be briefed, as any other candidate would. And by the way, Kristen Welker has Adam Schiff on Meet the Press. And could we play the part where Kristen Welker said, by the way, Congressman Schiff, you came on this show and many other shows lying about so-called evidence against Donald Trump. You said that there was evidence as plain as the eye could see that Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin to steal the 2016 presidential election. So why should we believe a word you say, sir, since you lie and lie and lie? But no, Kristen Welker didn't do that. I can't play that audio for you because Kristen Welker thinks that Adam Schiff is a good guy. Kristen Welker thinks Adam Schiff is truthful and an honest person to have on her show. He has no business even being on Meet the Press, let alone sitting up there and saying that the intelligence community is basically tipping the scales on behalf of Donald Trump, on behalf of Joe Biden. Honestly, Mercedes, it is a wonder Republicans ever win an election in this country.
Well, because Republicans believe in the fact that Americans get it. They see through all the BS. And, so I think that, and that's why you're seeing Donald Trump do so well in the polls, despite the fact that they're trying to destroy the man and destroy his family and destroy his organization, his businesses. I mean, come on. Yeah. People have had it. They know what's at risk. They know that they're not safe right now. They know that they can't pay for their food prices or their electricity bills or their rent or their mortgage because things are just way too expensive. And all that Joe Biden wants to do is just spend a lot more government money with all these ridiculous regulations that are never going to happen.
I understand, but to this point, though, when you've got Adam Schiff, congressman, you've got former CIA Director John Brennan basically saying the same thing last week. It's hard not to hear that and think, oh, okay, well, everything is rigged. The entire system is rigged. And the only way a Republican ever does get the nomination or wins is if it's a Republican who is approved, pre-approved by the blob, by the people who make decisions in this country. And okay, well, Romney's a Republican that we approve of, so that's okay. I'm sorry, our elections are not supposed to be that the guy wins as long as John Brennan and Adam Schiff approve of them ahead of time. Let the American people decide.
These were the same individuals like Brennan and all these national security folks who basically said that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation.
Exactly. Again, and those are the same people who won't give an honest briefing to Donald Trump, but they'll lie about the Hunter Biden laptop, thus tipping that election as well. I'd love to have an election in this country where the intelligence community isn't participating in it. It's 624. Coming up, he is going to join us. He is Stephen Sund. He's the retired chief of police for the Capitol Police from January 6th. Maybe he can shed some light on this question of National Guard troops and whether they were authorized or who didn't authorize them. We'll get to it next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 6:37. It's O'Connor and Company, and we are super busy this morning, but stick with us. We're going to get you informed and entertained as you go along. At 7:05, Joe DeGeneva, legal analyst. 7:35, Mark Morgan, former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Patrol. 8:05, Virginia Delegate Ian Lovejoy gives us an update on the General Assembly. And then at 8:35, Billboard Chris Elston and Mia Hughes, who was part of that study, reporting on that study showing linkage between transgender drugs and cancer. I'm Larry O'Connor, alongside Mercedes Schlapp. Good morning, Mercedes.
Happy Monday.
Thank you. It is a happy Monday. Every day I can start the day here on the radio, and especially with an effervescent young woman like you, Mercedes. It's a happy day in my life. Listen, we were just talking about this exclusive story from Molly Hemingway at The Federalist that says that Liz Cheney and the January 6th committee apparently has suppressed testimony of the deputy chief of staff to Mark Meadows, who confirms that in advance President Trump had authorized 10,000 National Guard troops for January 6th. In fact, Mark Meadows had also testified. Anthony Ornato, the deputy chief of staff, said that he heard Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, pushing D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser to request as many National Guard troops as possible that day, and President Trump suggested 10,000 would be appropriate given what was the crowds that were assembling. They're not alone. On, if I'm remembering right, January 2nd, or a couple of days before January 6th, the United States Capitol Police Chief of Police, Stephen Sund, also asked for National Guard troops ahead of time, speaking with the Sergeant at Arms. And that man joins us now. His book detailing the events of January 6th and really his career is called Courage Under Fire, Under Siege, and Outnumbered 58-1 on January 6th. He is Chief Stephen Sund. Sir, thank you for joining us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure, Larry. It's a pleasure to be on with you and Mercedes.
Am I right? You also saw what was coming, and you asked Nancy Pelosi to work with the D.C. mayor and get the National Guard deployed. Is that correct?
Yeah, what people don't realize is as the chief of the Capitol Police, I'm required by law. I'm the only chief that has a law that it's 2 U.S. 1970 that requires I go to the Capitol Police Board and request any federal assistance. So you're almost right. January 3rd, I went and requested assistance from the House Sergeant at Arms in the morning. It was the first day of the 117th Congress when they're swearing them in. I was denied. I was told to go talk to Mike Stinger, who is now the chairman of the Capitol Police Board. Spoke to him later that morning, was denied by both. So coming into January 6th, did not have the resources I wanted on my perimeter. I knew I was going to have a large perimeter. I knew I was going to have a lot of staff inside the building because of the joint session of Congress. Mm-hmm. I would have wanted more people on my perimeter and was denied. It doesn't surprise me. I know when I went and that the January 6th committee is not wanting to report that. When I went and testified, they wouldn't even have me testify in public with them. I testified just on a Zoom call for 6 hours, supposed to be a 2-hour interview. Testified for 6 hours, and it was clear they wanted to get as far away as possible from any institutional failures that occurred that day or anything that put any kind of fingerprints on any type of congressional leadership.
Sir, thank you for that. And in the intervening days, from January 3rd, when you requested from the House Sergeant at Arms that you could have the National Guard deployed, between then and the events of January 6th, were you privy to what the White House had done preemptively? Because, again, President Trump, no president can call in the National Guard. Otherwise, I guess you would have talked to the White House, right? But were you aware if President Trump had preemptively authorized this through the Pentagon and was encouraging this as well?
Well, there's a process in Washington, D.C. whenever the District of Columbia, because I used to be with D.C. Police and had worked with the National Guard on many occasions, where it goes through a process to get approval for National Guard through the DOD. And usually that will get approved through the president. We're the only territory that has that process. Everyone else gets approved through the governor. So that doesn't surprise me at all. And then when you look at what's interesting, and I haven't seen a lot of people bring this up, there's a February 4th, 2021 committee from the Homeland Security on the House of Representatives where it has a timeline, and it literally shows during January 6th, Mark Meadows is right there involved. 2:56, he's on the phone with Muriel Bowser, coordinating the National Guard, and at 4:31 is ensuring that approval has been given for the National Guard to do an emergency deployment to the Capitol. What's sad is it's more than an hour before they even get to the Capitol. And D.C. National Guard is literally less than 2 miles from behind the Capitol.
Yeah.
So he's involved. You can see there's already indications of it, and that's in congressional timeline.
So, Steve, you mentioned that the House Sergeant of Arms, they denied your request for additional assistance. What was the reason? Did they give you a reason why they denied it?
It's funny you asked that, Mercedes. Their reason was, first, they were concerned about the optics of the National Guard. And
wow.
Wait.
Think about that.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. We don't. Oh, well, luckily the optics were just great that day. The optics.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Keep going.
This is
Keep
the crazy
going.
part. So think about that word optics. So at 2:34 on January 6th, it took 71 minutes. Even on January 6th, 2:53, we started getting attacked on the West Front. 2:55, I call MPD. They send in some resources. 2:57, I make my first call to the House Sergeant Arms and the Capitol Police Board requesting approval of the two Sergeant Arms of the House and Senate. It took 71 minutes for them to give me approval. 11 phone calls to them. In the meantime, I'm making 32 phone calls to my partner agencies, getting any help I can. But 71 minutes before I get approval to bring them in, 2:34, I get on the phone with the Pentagon. Now I have to sell my request to the Pentagon. And guess the same reason they give me, they don't want to send them, optics.
Really?
Are you kidding me?
Piatt tells me, no, 100%. Lieutenant General Walter Piatt, I'll never forget it. Mayor Bowser, Chief Conti was on the phone with me, tells me, we're concerned about the optics of National Guard on Capitol Hill. Well, think about that. Why is everyone using this term optics? It's not a secret that, General Milley regularly spoke with Pelosi. So I tend to wonder why everyone is so concerned ahead of time with optics up on the Hill. And even while we're in the middle of battle, I'm being told, no, they're concerned about optics. Yet, what's the
That's
Pentagon
outrageous.
doing? They're sending resources to the generals' homes to protect their homes and not sending anybody to me. It's absolutely ridiculous.
We're speaking to retired Chief of Capitol Police Stephen Sund, who retired 2 days after the January 6th events. By the way, after ironically getting a vote of no confidence from Nancy Pelosi, who blamed part of the events of January 6th on a lack of leadership at the top of the department that was directed at you, Chief Sund. I want to go back to something you just said, because the crux of what we're discussing here is the January 6th committee's suppression of this testimony and not, revealing all of the facts that they discovered with regard to what happened that day. Did you say that you had a 6-hour Zoom call? It was supposed to be 2 hours, ended up being 6 hours, and that was it? You have the chief of police on January 6th only talked to that committee for 6 hours?
Yeah, only 6 hours. I would have stayed as long as they wanted. Like I said, originally it was 2 hours, and I stayed the entire time. But think about this. So there's a couple of interesting things there. One, you go back to this, the entire, the very first congressional hearing that was publicized, February 23rd, 2021, they didn't even want me there. They didn't want myself. They didn't want the two Sergeant Arms there. I actually had to go and request permission, had to go and specifically tell somebody on the Rules Committee, I promise you, I will be there in person. You got to let me testify. because I was that adamant about testifying.
Do you have an idea? I'm sorry, but do you have any idea why they didn't want you to testify? You were the chief of police on the day that all of this happened. I would think that your testimony and your awareness of the situation would be rather critical.
Larry, I've done dozens of after-action reports, and that would be the first person I would speak to. But think about it. This is a January 6th committee that did a big publicized televised hearings, changed some of the audio on my internal camera systems. Think about that. My internal camera systems don't even have audio, and they imported audio to make it sound more dramatic for the audience. Imagine if a chief of police ever changed body-worn camera video. What would happen to them?
Yeah.
They'd be immediately fired and brought up on charges. I mean, it's crazy, some of the stuff that goes on, and there's so much more. People have no idea what was going on behind the scenes.
Well, and we're going to have you. I saw you the other day, actually, and when this story hit, I just thought, oh my gosh, we should get Chief Sund on to comment on this. And you're right, there's so much more, and I think that we're going to keep getting more information as Representative Loudermilk of Georgia continues to discover more from what the January 6th hearing did. And ultimately, we just want the truth. We want the facts of what happened that day, the full story. And we'll certainly speak with you again, Chief Sund. Thank you so much for joining us at a moment's notice here.
No problem. Thank you again, Larry. Thank you again, Mercedes. Have a great day.
It is 6:46. Let's get straight to Jamie Whitten now.
Lincoln Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal.
Yeah,
that's right.
Lincoln Riley is the head coach of the USC Trojans, but that's a whole other story. Her name is Laken Riley. But, of course, the most objectionable thing about that young woman being murdered by an illegal immigrant in this country, a criminal, was that President Biden called her an illegal. And so he fixed that problem on MSNBC this weekend.
Look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look.
There you go. He expressed regret.
Unreal.
Yeah. Jonathan Capehart at MSNBC never thought to maybe ask if he regrets his policies that led to the murder of Laken Riley. No, he needs to express regret over using the word illegal.
It is about, think about it. Joe Biden is prioritizing the murderer who is illegal over Laken Riley, an American citizen who should have never died in the hands of this illegal alien that came to this country. Because when you're dealing with these policies that are allowing for these criminals to come in, I'm sorry, it's Biden's fault. It is an outrage.
Of course it is.
And it's an outrage.
Yeah, and
I've been using that word all day today.
I keep hearing that suburban moms are reluctant to vote for Trump because of this or that. Hey, suburban moms, think for a second. Your children, you're not Joe Biden or the Democrats' priority. The criminal from Venezuela in the country illegally and accused of murdering your daughter. That's their priority, and the hurt feelings that they
because they've got to get the right language.
Yeah.
The right language is the guy's a murderer, and Laken Riley should have never died. And yes, Joe Biden, her name is not Lincoln. Just outrageous what they prioritize in that administration.
At 7:35, we're going to speak with Mark Morgan, former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, about that.